Hi, Joe here, and welcome to Game Domain. And for this list, we will be ranking the worst to best 3D Legend of Zelda games. I say worst, but really, all these games are amazing, and none should be overlooked. We will be comparing review scores and our personal opinion for this list. Number 6, Twilight Princess, which is on the GameCube and the Wii. Twilight Princess had phenomenal graphics at the time, and it was what a lot of Zelda fans wanted after the cel-shaded art style of the Wind Waker. Twilight Princess had a realistic art style with a dark tone to it. The gameplay has held up well compared to some other Zelda games. The combat is fluid, the boss fights are excellently crafted, and the horseback combat was a brand new part of the gameplay that worked out very well. The dungeons are some of the best in any Zelda game. The items go so well with their respective dungeons, and they are implemented in fantastic ways. From a story standpoint, Twilight Princess has a very interesting one. The evil Ganondorf has escaped the Twilight Realm, and many places in Hyrule are in state of darkness. When you go into one of these places, you play as Wolf Link. It's pretty fun playing as Wolf Link, but a huge portion of these segments of the game are diminished because of collecting the Spirit Tears. This is the epitome of fetch quests. All you do is go around collecting the Spirit Tears. Some are out in the open, some require puzzles, but that is really the one major complaint of Twilight Princess. Even though it is last on this list, it is still better than 90% of the other games ever made, which is saying something. Number 5, Skyward Sword, which is on the Wii. Skyward Sword's controls revolve around the Wii motion controls, which are usually responsive, but occasionally won't be. Watch Nintendo play Skyward Sword at E3 2011, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Skyward Sword is often noted as the most linear Zelda game, and it is. The individual areas are unique and a blast to play. You don't get the feeling of exploring a huge world like you do in previous Zelda games. However, that's one con, when there are infinitely more pros. The story is a lot more personal this time. You're still rescuing the princess, but this time, Link knows Zelda, and they are both close friends. A big part of the story is also how Link is the first human to explore the ground world in hundreds or more years. It is also the beginning of the Zelda timeline, and it explains the binding of the Master Sword, why the heroes in different Zelda games wear green tunics, and why Ganon is who he is. Something else that is unique about Skyward Swords is the items. The previous Zelda games, you would have the hookshot, a bow, and an arrow, iron boots, and so on. While Skyward Sword has some old items, it also has a lot of new items, such as the sailcloth, the beetle, and a bunch of different shields. You also have a new way of transportation, being the loft wing. The loft wings are essentially giant birds that you use motion controls to fly around with, and as long as you know what you're doing, it can enhance the gameplay. Number 4, Majora's Mask for the Nintendo 64. Majora's Mask has had very high expectations of being a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time, which many people consider to be the best game of all time. Majora's Mask delivered on those expectations, and many consider it to be better than Ocarina of Time. There are only 4 dungeons, but all of them are great, except that one damn water dungeon! What makes Majora's Mask unique are the masks. If you ever wanted to play as a Goron, a Zora, or a Deku, you can in Majora's Mask. Instead of just using items to pass through the dungeons, you can also use the mask. This is also a mature Zelda game. Yes, it's not even rated T, but it's a dark game. And to understand it fully, chances are you'll have to be more mature. If you pay attention to the people in the world, you'll understand that like Termina, which represents the 5 stages of grief, that people are living through it. At first, people don't really accept their fate, but in the end, they do. This game is also filled with creative side quests that all tell a story. Number 3, Wind Waker for the GameCube. Wind Waker was controversial when it was announced due to its cartoonish art style. The argument that it's bad because of its cartoonish art style just baffles me. If anything, the unique art style just makes it a better game. First of all, it has aged very well graphically, 12 years after its release, and Ocarina of Time, on the other hand, has aged terribly graphically. I would say Wind Waker has aged much better than Twilight Princess, a game released 3 years later, and it was also on the next-gen system. The art style blends perfectly with what the Wind Waker is as a video game. Imagine the Wind Waker but with realistic graphics. It's also the first Zelda game to have Link actually have some personality. Even though he stays a silent protagonist, as always, there are only 6 dungeons. But just about all the dungeons are challenging, but fun. The NPCs are for the most part hilarious and quirky. Even the evil Ganondorf doesn't seem as evil this time. He has multiple chances to kill Link, but he doesn't. The pacing is better than pretty much every Zelda game. It is so fast, where you just go dungeon to dungeon. There's a lot of exploration involved. And whenever it seems like you'll go a while without anything important happening, something important has it. There are a ton of details that can have you just sailing around for hours, trying to find every last mini island. Before we get to 2, just know that this list is a mix of review scores and personal opinions. So before you comment saying that we're wrong, everyone's list is different. Number 2, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. Yes, we put the nearly perfect Ocarina of Time second on this list. I really have no major complaints about Ocarina of Time. The only minor complaint I have is that it feels like once you finish a dungeon, you go right to the other one, without a lot between that. But that's not even completely bad, far from it. Ocarina of Time has a bunch of dungeons, and except for 1 or 2 of them, water dungeon, maybe one has something to do with water dungeon, every dungeon makes the adventure even better. Ocarina of Time emphasizes puzzle solving a lot more than some other 3D Zelda games. The soundtrack is one of the most recognizable in video game history, and the Ocarina of Time revolutionized video games. Ocarina of Time is just about a perfect game. Everything about it makes up one of the greatest games of all time. Number 1, Breath of the Wild for the Wii U and the Nintendo Switch. It hasn't even been out for a month since Breath of the Wild was released, and it is already considered one of, if not, the best games of all time by many people. The world of Breath of the Wild is huge, over 100 shrines, and seemingly infinite amount of secrets to find, and a brilliant story that you have to find out yourself. The translation from old to modern could not have been better for the Breath of the Wild. It takes some of the best things from past Zelda games and improves upon it. The physics engine is extremely realistic. If you push a boulder and it hits an enemy, and it damages them. You even use the runes to solve various puzzles. There is also a ton of realism in how you would explore the world. There's a sound meter, and if you're too loud, enemies will hear you, and if you're in the rain, they won't hear you as much. If you are wearing metal during a storm, you can get struck by lightning. There's a temperature meter, so if it's too cold, we have to wear a shirt that resists cold. The combat in Breath of the Wild is by far the best in Zelda history. You have a ton of different weapons you can find and use, and the combat, and it's fast-paced. The dungeons and shrines make you think more logically. If you see a metal object, and there's a gap, use magnesis to move the metal object over the gap and get it across. That's why we think Zelda Breath of the Wild is the best 3D Zelda game. We know you probably have a different opinion, so please let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. And if you want a video where you can vote for your favorite 3D Zelda game, please let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and bye.